It happens every time. I just remember to turn this light on after we've gone live. So, okay, so now let me just pull up the thing and get the chat going.
Oh, that was disgusting.
Where are we?
So how was your day anyway?
Productive.
While we're getting everything ready.
Productive. I said built a brand new barbecue that my beautiful wife bought as a birthday present for me.
That is very Australian, barbecue building on Australia Day.
It did, but obviously then going to help mum and dad out. By the time I got back, it was too late to actually cook on the barbecue. So we tested all the flames, everything fires up straight away, so...
Gets nice and hot, that's all that matters.
It does, and very quickly as well, so that's a good thing.
Is it about the same size as your last one, or a little bit smaller?
No, it's a 6-burner, opposed to... that. I mean, the other one was a 6-burner as well, but it was a massive one, that one. So this is more your standard. It's got the hood and everything on it.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's really nice. So
when you first said you built a barbecue, I was envisioning that you had the hot plate half.
That's speaking Australians.
And you built a brick base and then put it down. No, speaking Australians, as you build the C out of bricks and then steal your neighbour's fence gate.
Yeah, that's the one.
And then you leave a thank you sausage and risol.
God, that's funny, that show. If anybody doesn't know what we're talking about, look up Speaking Australians on YouTube.
How to speak Australians.
Yeah, it's about an Indian call centre where they're teaching them how to speak Australian. So this it's terrible. So, okay, so I am watching there's one person watching at the moment. We're a bit behind the 8 ball with it all, just waiting for it all to catch up. So we don't have James with us for our chat tonight, so the chat's going to do its own thing.
If the chat works.
Better. If anybody comes in, please say something in the chat so we know that it's working. And the other thing is, with it being Australia Day, we don't know who's out there having a lamb barbecue and all that other stuff.
That was the other one, old Sam Kekovich.
Yeah.
With the lamb campaign.
Yeah, I didn't think that much of the ad this year. I mean, in America, they have their Super Bowl ads. We have our Australia Day lamb ads with Kekovich.
I thought that the lamb ads stopped about 4 years ago, to be honest.
No, there's been one every year, but not as good as they were. So, no.
Yeah, see, I don't really watch a lot of TV, so it's probably been about 4 or 5 years since I've actually sat down and watched TV itself.
I can't even remember when I actually watched free-to-air TV for a long time. I know.
How did you see the lamb ad?
This is where I was just going. We've started watching, I've started watching Lynn Can't Stand It. And I've got to admit, it's not as good as it used to be, but I started watching The Gladiators. I used to love that show. But the new version is very corny. And hey, Christy, how are you?
Hi, Christy.
It's very corny, but at the same time, the new show started off in England, and that's a bit better because they're still in front of a live audience, and there's that whole crowd interaction thing, which makes it better. But
so which one happened first, the English or the Australian Gladiators?
English. Well, the Americans started it off with the American Gladiators, and
wasn't that back when it was called American Gladiator Warrior?
I don't know. I think it was just the American. I think it was any of our American friends might know, but it was the American Gladiators. And then the first I saw was when Mum and Dad came back from England and they had a video with the English Gladiators. Yep. I was hooked right from then. And then, of course, the Australians had their original version, which stopped after a few seasons. And it's all back again after a big, big break. So while that was on, that's where I saw the Sam Kekovich ad.
And so Gladiators in your house is like State of Origin.
It depends on who's winning State of Origin as to whether it's like that. Obviously, if Queensland are winning, yes, it's very much like that. If New South Wales are winning, it's very much the other way around. So, yeah. How are you, Christy? What have you been up to?
Christy said, "I'm good, thanks."
We've got 3 people in so far, so we're just waiting for a few people to come in before we start kicking off and getting into it all. But yeah, I mean,
it could be a good thing. It could be a bad thing.
Yeah, we have something fairly interesting. I mean,
it
it's
is
not,
something different.
It's different. It's not really paranormal that we're going to be talking about tonight, but it's definitely in our hemisphere there. You know, it's sort of still.
Well, considering the podcast we started off, and I don't think it was very paranormal with the live streams to start.
Urban. Oh, no. Well, the live streams when we first started out, God, they were terrible, weren't they?
Still, it was good because it was just free flowing and it didn't have any one thing to stay on topic, so we could just be us.
Yeah, and probably the next 2 or 3 until we get back in the swing of it are going to be very much like that as well. I mean, we're going to try and sort of get back into it because once we found that you guys like specific topics for the live streams as well, that's when we started doing that, and everyone received them well. But I'm seeing some weird things on the cameras tonight. It's no wonder so many people get suckered in by orbs and rods and things like that, because I'm looking at some of these insects flying around under the UV lights, the infrared lights, sorry. And because it's such a low frame rate, you're getting those weird sort of what they call rods.
Bubbles.
And a lot of people sort of say, oh, yeah, but they're orbs. And anybody of you guys that know me on Facebook will know that I absolutely hammered Facebook recently. Well, yesterday I think it was, going through, putting up all old photos and stuff. And I found some interesting orb photos when I was first starting out with Wappen. Now this one, it was literally bright blue. I mean, electric blue, and it had a trail going off it and everything, and it's still sort of, yeah, it probably is something, but it's interesting, the colouring of it. It just doesn't gel with your normal sort of orb, but I'm still not an orb person, but, you know.
Sounds like Christy's been having fun and a bit busy. Fishing, crabbing, going for drives to wherever it takes them.
We were supposed to be going fishing last night, but the wind was absolutely blowing a gale, so we gave it a miss, and we're probably going to go next weekend.
I was supposed to go tonight, but we had other plans to do this.
We did. I could have probably taken Dad fishing tonight. But,
it's probably better weather tonight. That's okay.
It's very still tonight, very still. I'm looking on the security cameras, and there's not even a gnat's fart of breath out there. It's just dead. So.
And unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to make it tomorrow night. I have daddy duties while Kerry's at work.
Oh, bummer. Yeah, if anybody is watching and they want to come on a Skywatch night, we are holding a Skywatch night tomorrow night, which is just code for talking crap. And
or you can look into Gary's eyes and gaze.
Well, no, not really, because I'm going to be looking up anyway. So.
Oh, nice.
Oh, I haven't done that.
Crabbing?
Nah.
I feel like my back just won't let me do it anymore.
Oh, that's yeah. That's like that a lot with things that I'm talking about.
I was waiting for you to say it's just my age, but
well, you said it, so I don't need to.
But yeah.
Oh, sorry for that little slurp.
We've got 2 other people in watching at the moment.
Yeah, I don't know who they are. If you want to come into the chat and say hello, please do so. So.
We're sitting at 140 subscribers now too.
I know. Since over those last couple of weeks, it's been going up quite steady. I mean, I'm checking it probably once or twice a day now to see if it's gone up any now. The views on that last one are going up, but the subscribers are a little bit slow. I mean, you know, we've got 140 subscribers now. Let's see if we can get it to 1,000 by the end of the weekend. That's not going to happen.
Oh yeah, Christy, and that's, I mean, kids need to be taught these things now rather than later, because you got better luck of half of these kids these days playing with an iPad than what you would running around and going fishing and getting dirty and having fun. It's a shame.
It's the same with playing guitar and things like musical instruments. I mean, both the boys play guitar and stuff like that, but you throw one of those PlayStation Guitar Hero things in front of them and they're loving that, but that's not really playing the guitar. Yes, teaching you to move your fingers quick, but it's not teaching you the chords and stuff like that, you know.
Hand-eye coordination.
Yeah, that's it. Oh, We're sitting on three still. So
it's like half of these toddlers. They can't can't type shoelaces, but they have to use Velcro. But you give them an iPad, and they're like Tony Stark and Iron Man going like this.
Yeah,
it's the truth.
Oh, I know. I've seen it. So, all right.
Shall we?
We're 10 minutes in, so we'll crank the starty music up, and then we'll get into it. Okie dokie. I hit the right screen this time.
Yay.
I was panicking. I was going to push the wrong one because I've got so many screens set up now. But how is everybody tonight? We've got Christy in chat, and we have Christy in chat, and we have Christy in chat, which is great.
Christy's putting Mark to shame.
I know. Well, Mark's supposed to be there tomorrow night. I don't know if you were here a few minutes ago, but we have a Skywatch night coming up tomorrow night with Wapper, and we've got a few people come along, so it's going to be a good night. But tonight we are going to talk something a little different to usual. We're going to talk mysterious things, aren't we? So I'm not sure if you want to sort of kick us off with one before we sort of...
Well, the main one I said about before this even started was more to do with the disappearance of Harold Holt being Australia Day. I'm thinking you're bringing that up as the Australian disappearance. Yeah, I don't know a whole heap on it. I know that he
that's the mystery. Not many people do know. I mean, I'm sure somebody
the
do.
Facts behind, you don't know the facts behind it. No one really does. But they do say that he disappeared at approximately 12:20 p.m. on the 17th of December in 1967. Look, if I was a prime minister of a country, I'd probably want to disappear after a while too.
Yeah. And
he supposedly disappeared at Cheviot Beach near Portsea in Victoria.
He went for his regular swim and never came back. And considering as a Prime Minister of Australia, that's like seeing the President of the United States going for a swim and then suddenly disappearing. Can you imagine the uproar that happened after, if something like that was to happen?
Yeah, but look around those times and what sort of Prime Ministers you had. You had Harold Holt that liked his swimming and went swimming, and you had Bob Hawke nailing beers.
Bob Hawke was a little bit later. You know, he was probably... he was in the 80s, so...
Yeah, still. 60s, 70s, 80s.
He was... When we won the Australia Cup, the America's Cup, he goes, if you don't give your guys a day off work for this, you're a bloody mongrel. As he was socking back the beers, you know. He's a good one. He was a good one. But yeah, we'll start off with a few of the Australian ones, and then we will sort of head further afield, and then we'll get into some of the weird and the wonderful to do with strange islands and things.
What was weird was in 2007, they held a television special on Channel 9, Who Killed Harold Holt?
Yeah.
And then it got onto the whole thought of, was Harold Holt's disappearance a suicide?
Well, you know what's really interesting about that is, for you people who are watching our regular shows as well as our live streams, and last week we tried something a bit different with the short form. So let us know in the chat what you think of the short form video, because I want to get your idea on what you think it is, as well as obviously we're going to be looking at the analytics and things like that, because we might start throwing a few more of those out there as well as doing our regular shows and doing our live streams. But we actually have a show coming out next week. You'll have seen the premiere thumbnail go up on the logo about the agent and the alien abductee. Now, it wasn't originally supposed to go like that. It was originally supposed to be about an alien abductee. That's Lala Bright, and we were going to be interviewing her. But her partner, he came on to get everything set up, and while it was setting up, we learned that he is a ex-intelligence operative, is all I should say, and I can't name which agency because he sort of... it was sort of we were led to believe that it was several different lettered agencies that everybody knows and everybody's heard of. And I asked him a few questions about that, and it ended up talking more to him than we were actually at the Lala. And we're going to do a second follow-up just so we can set that straight so they get even sort of time, because it was originally supposed to be Lala, but some of the stories he had to say were so interesting. And where I'm going with this is I actually said to him, I said, have you ever heard about the Westall incident in Melbourne, Australia back in the 60s about the UFOs there? And he said, yes, he has. And I said to him how American agents were on the ground pretty American military were on the ground pretty quick to interview the witnesses and things like that. And what he had to say about that was short, sweet, and you have to watch to find out. But it was very interesting. And then some of the other stuff that was said, and you tie that in with some of the things that have happened to Lala as well. You can't miss next week's episode. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. But all I'm saying is, with something like the Harold Holt disappearance, you can't rule out an international connection possibly there as well.
Well, that's where I was going to get at, and I've just seen that Carl has joined the chat, so this is going to be Carl's rubbing his hands together at the same time. There are conspiracies on the whole Harold Holt disappearance, apart from being the suicidal murder.
Yep.
There's one that says that he was actually a spy for the Chinese government.
The Prime Minister?
Yes. Wow. Ever since he began studying the University of Melbourne in 1929, and that he had pretended to drown instead of theorising once below the surface 2 Chinese frogmen transported into China in a submarine. And there's also claims that ASIO covered up any evidence. The theory was first promoted by British writer Anthony Gray's 1983 novel The Prime Minister Was a Spy. Other conspiracy theorists claim that Harold Holt was assassinated, and targets of the claims include North Vietnam and the US Central Intelligence Agency.
See, what I find strange about that is Australia we're so far removed from the rest of the world in relation to any kind of espionage and stuff like that. Why would we be targeted? But another thing that gets brought up in this show that's coming up next week is about how we now have the new Virginia-class submarines coming to Garden Island here in WA in the coming years.
Not just that, wouldn't you want to expect the unexpected from a place like this? Considering if you're thinking of espionage and not going to happen, and it is going to happen or it isn't going to happen, wouldn't you want to keep the place that is least likely to do it closer to you, or what you think was?
My head's spinning now from that one.
Right, so if you're ASIO or the CIA, and you're worried about espionage, or you wanted to be involved in espionage, wouldn't you send them to the place that's least likely to do it? Or sorry, that are least likely to be seen doing it.
Yeah. But again,
and you think about the trade, or maybe, I don't know if it was back then, but the trade deals, the trades, and how close China actually is to here.
Well, we all know what's going on at the moment with what's happening up in the island chains just above us and everything, with China trying to acquire land and rights and things like that, and then we're going up there to try and stop that because it's going to put them right at our doorstep.
I don't know why we're worried about stopping them right up the north when they've already got plots here. We just give it away to them.
Well, it's like the thing that was on the news the other day about the Russian guy who's already been proven to be part of the KGB or whatever they call themselves these days, and how he was sitting on that block of land within a stone's throw of our Parliament House because somehow they'd gotten hold of it to build some sort of a Russian embassy or something there, and they actually did the smart thing and put a stop to that from what I could hear. But how many things are happening covertly that we don't know about, just under the guise of different corporations and things?
Not far out of when it's Bruce Rock. So just out of Bruce Rock, there's another. You got a couple other towns. That airport was sold to the Chinese pre-COVID for $1. I'm pretty sure it was, because of the condition of it. Now, pre-COVID, they had spent all the money, got all that runway back up, built a housing facility for the Chinese people, and they'll bring them in and out. nobody heard of that unless you were a resident close. And then after COVID happened, or when COVID hit, they all disappeared.
And so
It's still owned by the Chinese. They've still got a housing community, and it doesn't get touched.
And this is the problem. As soon as they have access to runways and things like that, you lose all control of what they could be bringing in and out of the country.
Look at the port and the runways in Darwin, up near Darwin.
Yeah.
They're Chinese owned. They're worried about selling land at Cockatoo Island and the rest of it. What does it matter? They've already bought in the mainland.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it makes you wonder what else is going to be happening soon with foreign ownership and things like that, especially with what's going on in the Northern Hemisphere and everything, with different people now joining NATO, and they're trying to bring Ukraine into NATO, and then that's going to change the demographic and the whole setup of the war.
They're trying to force Russia into NATO.
I don't know how that's going to work, because they're just not going to do it. But the problem you got then is, obviously, you're going to have this.
Are just bullies.
Yeah, you're going to have this alliance between Russia, China, and North Korea, and that is a very powerful.
I'm moving to Russia if that happens.
Hey,
I'm moving to Russia if this happens.
Oh, I don't know. But one of the things again that was brought up is the fact that with these new Virginia class subs being based out of, well, at least some of them being based out of Garden Island, is that going to make Perth a target if we aren't already a target? I mean, there's not a hell of a lot of threats that come in and out of Garden Island anyway. I think you're talking more sort of up along Townsville and up around there, where you got a lot of the military bases up there, which are more strategic than Perth. Mm-hmm. But Perth's got access to the entire Indian Ocean. And you've got the Cocos Islands and those few little island chains out in the middle there that don't seem to do much, and they'll be very strategic as well. But that's sort of that whole area under India and Indonesia and stuff like that. That's not as direct as the Pacific side, where you've got the direct route up towards Japan and China and Korea and all of that. So
I'm surprised Carl's had nothing to say about the whole Harold Holt thing being a spy.
Yeah.
He said nothing. Carl, I'm surprised. I'm baffled.
While we're talking about mysteries and things like that, especially we're starting off with the Australian flavour before we disappear. Another one is the Beaumont children. Now, that was 3 kids went down to Glenelg Beach one sunny summer's afternoon in the 60s, I do believe it was, and they've never been seen since. Now, I know that's not specifically paranormal, but how can 3 siblings... I mean, I suppose there's 1,000 different answers as to why or how, but there's that intrigue about the whole thing. Carl's just going, shh. One person, yeah, but 3 people, 3, well, I think it was 2 sisters and a brother.
Yeah,
all disappeared and never been seen or heard from since. So, and they'd be older than me now. You know what I mean? Is it a case of they've been brainwashed into thinking they're somebody else and something like that, in some sort of a cult situation? Were they murdered?
No.
Which is what I tend to think probably more is the case.
Nancy passed away in 2019, and Jim passed away in April 2023, aged 97.
I said the parents.
Yeah.
They never knew. They never knew what happened.
No.
That's so sad. But,
considering in some cases you probably would not want to know what happened.
But yeah, I know, but it's a scary thing. It's a scary thing, especially when you've got kids. I mean, you're going to know, because the protectiveness of a parent. And back then, life was so different. I mean, people never used to lock their doors. People, never used to worry about political correctness and anything like that, Hey, how are you, mate? And now it's just, life is so complicated, and then you throw in a lot of these mysteries and things, and I don't know, we may head in a different direction soon, but it's scary. It's really scary. I'm actually thinking we might kick into some of these mysterious islands and things like that, which again started a long time ago. There's There's an island in. It's not. This isn't really a mystery, but it's a place I would love to go. Obviously, you've got Poveglia Island in Venice, which is that's on my bucket list of places to go. Even though
out of bounds now.
Well, it's been out of bounds for a long time, but they still allow certain people with permits to get in there if there's money. I'm assuming crossed over the palm or under the palm, however you want to do it. But I'd love to check that place out. Now everybody knows about the history of it if you watched Ghost Adventures and any one of 100 different shows that have been out there. But that has a little bit of everything there, the paranormal. In fact, I saw some documentaries on the Poveglia Island, the digging up the graves and stuff. Now, if you actually look at the island, you've got the main island, which has all these structures, the buildings and things like that. But there's a little bridge that goes over to a second part of the island, and you can actually see it. It's almost like a separate island, but it's all pushed together. And the rumour is that when you walk on that, the surface feels different. It's not like a hard mud. You actually feel your feet sink. It's squishy. You feel your feet sinking into it. And what they're saying is they set up there was that many people dying on the island that they actually basically set up like a corral type thing, and they were just throwing the bodies in there, and they had this thing around so that they didn't just disappear. They didn't float off and hit mainland Venice and all that. So even though mainland Venice doesn't really exist because it's all like little mini islands and shit, but they didn't drift off. And then what happens is eventually they just sat on top of each other, and as they decomposed and all the wind blowing, all the stuff blowing dust, and it became an island in its own right. But on the main part, there's actually some cemetery types areas there, mass graves and things, but there are some that are off separate, and they're the ones that are interesting because if you actually look at them, the way they've been set up is if you go back and you look at ancient law in relation to vampires and things like that, they actually must have thought these people were vampires because they had like stones in their mouth so that they couldn't do anything, and all these different bits, and they were going right into the DNA, and they were checking some of these things out to work out if there was anything different about them which might have added to this whole vampire or werewolf type legend stuff. So there's a lot of interesting activity on that island, whether it be the scientific side of things or the more paranormal side of things, where obviously Ghost Adventures and a lot of those shows have been there doing the old "I've been attacked by a demon,"
Zak Bagans.
Yeah. I had words with Zak Bagans today.
The real one or the fake one?
I don't think it was the real one, but I did have words with him because I thought he was a bit arrogant, which does fit with the real one. But
we'll call him Bagzagans.
Yeah.
This is off of Wish.
Baggins is from the Shire. Anyway, we'll stop that one. Yeah. Yes. I just lost my whole train of thought with that.
Well, I'm just trying to think whether someone's got a listening device with Carl because he's been very quiet.
Yes, he's definitely watching his P's and Q's at the moment, and even Fernando,
would you like to borrow?
I'm pretty sure he's got his own tinfoil out somewhere. But that, talking about islands and things, now you've got that one, but if you go off Indonesia, there's an island where all the mainland inhabitants take their dead family members. They don't actually bury them on the island. They just find them a nice little spot so they can enjoy the view and leave them there. And then once a year, obviously as new people die, they get taken over there, but they go back on the anniversary of the deaths and things like that to visit their family people. And in fact, there's some spots where they actually, have you seen them where they dress them up and they give them cigarettes and things like that, and then clothes with families?
I was watching the videos going, what the hell are these people doing to these people?
Weird, but
they party with them.
Yeah. But if you go to this island, literally, it's not even like they're buried in graves. You'll walk through like skeletons and decomposing people everywhere. Can you imagine what the smell would be like?
Carl's been subdued. It's not really Carl. It's pineapple.
We said we were not going to mention the pineapple tonight.
I tried not to. It was funny.
If anybody wants to know who said pineapple is, you're going to have to message us in private because we're not going to say it publicly. I've already set a couple of people straight because they were going down the wrong path. with it, but just shoot us a message if you want to know. Now, that is one place I actually, when we were supposed to be doing this TV show with Ray Jordan and several others, that was one of the places that I put forward as a place to visit. And it actually freaked people out, the fact that you could, I mean, we didn't know if we were going to get permission or anything like that, but actually spending a night on an island where the dead are actually on the surface and doing a paranormal investigation, can you imagine how freaky that would be?
It'd sell.
Well, that was one of the things that we had set up. So I like this whole thing about the islands because you can't get off. I mean, as long as it's not like White Island in off New Zealand where there's a bloody great unpredictable volcano there. I wouldn't want to in that situation.
Well, as long as it's not the same islands that Michael Rockefeller went to.
There you go. You're mentioning some big names there.
There's some conspiracies around that one too, hey Carl? Watermelon.
I don't even want to go down this track because
what track?
I know exactly where you're heading. I know exactly where you're heading.
Where?
To a certain person who died in jail.
Oh no, not at all. Nope, completely opposite.
Oh, okay.
Yep. No, the whole. Well, you were talking about mysterious islands.
Yeah.
And that was something that popped into my head. No, Carl, I wasn't thinking.
There you go. Carl was thinking the same thing as well.
No, well, because he was doing a What was he doing? You call it an adventure. He was making a documentary about the Islay Islands through certain areas, which is now owned by like Indonesia, sort of Papua area. And he found one of the Cannibal Islands.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about now. Yeah.
He went missing, and they found his boat. The video that was recovered was him going to the shore, and these people were going crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's been conspiracy theories and updates that have been put up after that saying that Michael Rockefeller is really Tom Hanks now. No, I'm being serious.
Yeah. Carl said he's
they've
not
even they've even got the face. They've even got the point where they've got face structure scans of Tom Hanks and this guy at the same age and a whole heap of different things.
Yeah.
It's real weird, man. Like this.
It's interesting. There's actually an island off India as well, which is very similar, where the tribes on that island, they're cannibal. You know, they're cannibalistic. I think missionaries have been there a couple of times, but they always get eaten. So they've literally put a ban on it. Even planes now do not fly their path. Their flight paths and whatever, avoid the airspace even near these islands, just leaving them to do their thing. And yeah, that's probably an island where I wouldn't want to go because I like the idea of investigating something where nobody from the outside world has been before, but to actually risk waking up in a giant teapot, or a giant cauldron being ready to be, broiled and stuff.
As weird as it sounds when I said about the whole Tom Hanks thing looking like, I've just looked at a photo now of Rockefeller next to Hanks. The jawline, the nose, the eyes, the ears, and the skull shape look the same. It's a coincidence, but it's weird.
That's what a lot of people, when they draw similarities from things like that as well. It's funny how when we talk about islands, some of these strange things that happen on some of these islands, because if you go back, even H.G. Wells, back in the late 1800s, he wrote the Island of Dr. Moreau, which is what we were talking about just before we went live, and I don't think you've heard of it, haven't you? No, it's about some people like that landed on the island and came across these strange aberrations of part people, part animal, and mutated, and all these strange and weird life forms, I guess. And it turns out it was Dr. Moreau's, this mad scientist who basically is not cannibalizing, but splicing different parts of different creatures and putting them together to see how they work and see what works and what doesn't work. And it's actually pretty demented back in the day. And now I don't know how much Fernando knows about this, but if you look up Plum Island and places like that, not far from where he is actually, and some like the Montauk Monster and things like that. Some of these weird things that have washed up on the shores. They actually, I think, it's a bit like with that island, Pavia Island in Venice. They actually they put an exclusion zone around the entire island, and this is a government island with government facilities on there, and it makes you wonder what was going on there. Now, they said it was all to do with scientific research, to do with different bacteria and different infections and stuff like that, and they're talking, like the CDC have the high security places where they have some of the really deadly viruses and stuff. Well, that's how this island was passed off as, but seeing some of these mutated things wash up on the shore. Now, if anybody looks up the Montauk Monster on Google, you'll see pictures of this. I don't know, it's half seal, half dog. If I keep saying half this and half that, it ends up being 2 or 3 things because you can only do 2 halves. But there's lots of bits and pieces of different animals in this weird, very weird thing. Now, that's not the only one that's washed up. There's been several others as well. You're looking at it?
Yeah, I've just Googled it.
Yeah, and there's several others that have washed up in different beaches around the place. Now, they actually declared it was safe to go back in the water close to the island.
Yeah, one's the Brooklyn Bridge Monster. Maybe this is a distance of the Long Island Montauk Monster. Do you know what it looks like? Looks like someone's left special effects equipment from movies and sets, and someone's just dumped it somewhere.
Don't get me started on the Nazis. Look at it.
Looks like props. That's all it looks like.
Yeah. Well, but the thing is, and that's what everybody thinks first up when they see a photo. It's just been faked. It's some sort of a latex sort of thing. But there's actually, when they were doing the inspections on it and doing like an autopsy and stuff like that, it was actually made up of biological stuff. So it was, and it was a mix. There was a lot of different mixes of DNA in there. They couldn't actually identify all of it because there was, how like humans have their set DNA, dogs have their set DNA. Every animal has its set DNA. This had a mix of different DNAs, which makes you think obviously it's definitely been some sort of a biological experiment.
Or they've just pumped in all different sorts of bloods in this thing and gone, yeah, have fun. Possibly.
And it's the same when you look at a lot of the actual Bigfoot people. Oh, there was that guy, he was a bloody prankster, but he made it famous. He got his 2 minutes of fame because he said he actually caught one, a dead one, and he brought it back and put it in his fridge. And they sent these photos of it in one of those big chest freezers and stuff. And, it was interesting, but very fake. I'm trying to mute this thing.
So what you could say is really this Montauk Monster was a monster mash.
That's terrible. That is terrible. But yeah, Carl's mentioned... as the Nazis did a bit of that too. Come on, Carl, start firing up in the chat. Tell us a bit so we can get the conversation going in a weird direction. I mean, this is totally non-paranormal, but when you talk about, there's an island, I think it's off Argentina, and I can't for the life of me remember the name of this island, but it was rumored that there's a massive Spanish treasure buried on this island, but they said what better place to bury it because the actual number of one of the most deadly snakes on the planet reside pretty much exclusively on this island. And they reckon wherever you stand, if you do a 360, there'll be at least 20 snakes in your view. You might not see them all, and these are all, I think they were golden lancehead vipers, one of the most deadly venoms on the planet. And who would want to go? That's actually another one that's banned as well. You're not allowed to approach that just because of the high concentration of snakes there. And they did a show where they went there.
I just typed in to do with the Nazis and the stuff they were doing. It came up with a World War II anti-Axis Hitler monkey figure trio. It's got a monkey going like this with a swastika on its arm and a noose around its neck.
Yep. Yeah, it's weird. It was weird, some of the symbolism that they were doing. I was actually watching a thing actually, it was a video. It was not about that, but I think that very image popped up in this video. They were talking about the multi-world theory and stuff like that, and they said, there's a world out there where every possibility has happened. They said there's one where you're a detective who finds this body in this building, and then in another life there's one where you're the murderer trying to hide that body in that building, and then in another life you are the body in that building. And they said there's one where you're going to be a famous actor or an astronaut or something like that, and then there's other ones where you're going to basically be like a Hitler type figure and mass murderer, Charles Manson kind of cult leader kind of thing.
I'm glad you said cult leader because he wasn't a mass murderer.
No, he was the cult leader that his followers did all the killings. But where I'm going is every possibility they say is happening out there. But in that video, they did talk about there was one where the Germans won the Second World War, and that specific image with that monkey and everything did come up. So
that was that series was on Amazon Prime.
What's that?
Where the German, it was what it would be like if the Germans had have won World War II.
See, I never.
It was called The Man in the High Castle.
Yes, they were talking about that as well. They talked about that show.
That was a novel or a book written, and then they made it into a series. So that literally was portrayed upon if Nazi Germany had it occupied and won.
See, the one I watched was the Philadelphia Experiment 2, where a spy plane, it had a nuclear bomb, like a U-2 spy plane or something like that, disappeared in the modern world and it actually went backwards. You know how in the saying for the Philadelphia Experiment is that the sailors went forward in time to the 1980s and then they went back. Well, in the second film, which is, obviously the first one, it's very controversial. Some say the Philadelphia Experiment really did happen with the USS Eldridge and weird things happened, and then others are saying, nah, it's just fake and this, that, and the other. So there's a lot of controversy and a lot of conspiracy about that all on its own. But the second film was just complete and utter fiction, where this U-2 spy plane disappeared and it turned up, the Nazis caught it in the Second World War complete with a nuclear bomb, and then they delivered that nuclear bomb which changed the Second World War in their favour, because everyone knows what happened in Japan. That sort of stopped everyone in their bloody tracks really quick then. So this was a lot bigger yield, and obviously then they cut forward in time, but because, and this is where you talk about the Back to the Future 2 paradox, because you're going backwards in time from that point, it's in that timeline, not back in your original timeline. So they've gone back to the future, but it's the future after the Germans had won the war, and it's very, well, as you would imagine, very clinical and very oppressive kind of future. So it was very interesting.
So Fernando, to go with your whole Snake Island.
Yeah, that's the one I think I was talking about.
So that had people living there up until the 1920s, until they put an automated lighthouse in. Now there's only two. Yeah. There's only two reasons for people to go there now. That's the Brazilian Navy to make sure that it's still running properly, and selected scientists to study the snakes.
And people to change the light globe on the lighthouse. But the on this particular show, there was a scientific team that were allowed there, and they had a lot of the customs come up, or the Coast Guard come up and check their papers and stuff like that, but they still had like modern day pirates coming up with guns and everything, wanting to know what's going on and what they could loot from them. So it's not just on the land, even the water around it's dangerous, you know. And it's hard to even find a spot to actually step off, because the it's just so rugged. If you've actually had a look at a picture of this, it's like basically a giant hill that comes out of the water. You know, a long sort of hill. So
that's, like, they reckon that's the most, dangerous island in the world. Obviously, they haven't been here. We got snakes. We got dangerous snakes.
We got feral quackers as well.
We've
got kill you with cuteness.
We've got bogans and crackheads.
And you know what? While we're talking about Rottnest, we WAPR, we went over there. Oh, shoosh, way back I think 2011, 2012, and we actually met up with a French film crew that were over there shooting a documentary on the history of Rottnest Island, and the penal colony past where it was like a prison island and stuff like that, which is funny considering Australia was originally like a prison island, and then the islands off Australia were like that. But we had an Aboriginal elder come along with us, and he actually taught us a few Aboriginal terms and things like that. He said if you're going to do a paranormal investigation, this documentary wasn't a paranormal thing. It was talking about the history of the island, but they thought it was really interesting to follow a paranormal team on location to see what we picked up. So that's why we were taught a few words to try as an EVP thing. Now, he said one place you will not, he goes, you might get a little bit of activity on the outskirts, he goes, but you won't get anything in the middle. And he said, and that is the campground, which I'm not sure if it's the same campground now or if it's changed since then. And he said you won't even find a quokka going to there, because they believe that when an Aboriginal person died on the island, their spirit became a quokka on the island, and that every quokka on the island is basically the spirit of an Aboriginal person who's passed away there. And he said you will not find a quokka in the campground. And we had it on film, which was all we handed over to the film crew. There were no quokkas in that ground. He said, no, they stay away from that. And we actually used some of these words in EVP sessions and things like that, some of these phrases that we were taught. And we got some responses in, I can't remember which dialect it was, but it was one of the Aboriginal dialects. That's
wouldn't have been the Wadjuk?
Something like that, yeah. And it's just really interesting when you bring up about the ferals on Rottnest Island, but the quokkas, they're gorgeous little things, but it's just interesting.
They're overgrown rodents.
They are, but they're still cute. I've got some photos that are cute. I don't like those ones that you see on the HBF ads, but the you know where I'm going.
Meerkats are far better.
But while we were on Rottnest, I mean, this is nice and close to us, and the second reason we were over there for the second trip was because the Rottnest Island board actually got in contact with us. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. And they actually, covered our accommodation and travel costs to get over there, because they had a paint crew out at Kingston Barracks that was supposed to be painting the barracks up, and they had a noise. They actually picked it up because it scared the shit out of the paint crew. So they started recording with their phones, and they had about 2 or 3 recordings of this, and I could not identify what it was. It was the biggest shriek. It was so intense that a person couldn't have done it. It was like a guttural shriek. That's the only way I can describe it. Now, you can pick the biggest guy up and you could get him to do the big guttural, It was deeper than that, but higher pitched at the same time. But it went for so long, the lung capacity of this thing, whatever it was. Remembering, Rottnest Island's not very big. So we're talking possibly interdimensional kind of thing for it to disappear the way it is. And I actually tried looking for that tape not long ago when I was going through my stuff, and I can't find it anywhere. But they wanted us to try and come up with some sort of an answer to it, because they wanted off the island. They didn't want to be anywhere near the island. And it was. Yes, I know painters do sniff a lot of their own fumes, but when they've actually got it recorded on 3 different devices, well, that's enough for any paranormal team. If you can identify something on 3 different devices, we go, well, you got something legit there. And they did that, and they weren't even a paranormal team. So it's actually interesting we talk about paint teams, because there was another incident with a different paint team in a different location. But so we spent a whole weekend over there, and the island it's got a lot of history about it. We went and did an investigation of the gun tunnels up on the other side of the island there and everything. That was pretty quiet, but some pretty creepy stuff to have a walk through. But yeah, I don't know. You know, I think there's a lot going on at Rottnest Island that we just don't know about. But it's so laid back; it's hard to paint it in that kind of light. And I don't think the tourism board would want it painted in that kind of light because they're trying to really get the tourism going. You know what I mean? But it's a great place to go.
Yeah. But tourism, you start saying, you know, haunted locations, boom, there's your tourist numbers popped up. Look at the Fremantle prison.
Yeah. 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 Speaking of which, actually, we could do the gun tunnels in Fremantle at some point. They were open to us going out there and doing an investigation. That's a pretty interesting. We've been there probably 3 or 4 times, so that's worth a look at as well. Yes.
Mysterious islands. See, I've always been captivated by the whole Easter Island heads.
Yeah.
Like, how? Is it is it just the heads poking out and the feet are at the other end, or?
No, they found the rest of the whole body is there. It's just it's all underground, and that's part of the question is why did they bury them and just leave them underground, or were they originally all out of the ground and something's happened and I don't know, the landscape has changed.
You stand in the beach where the tide's rolling in and you watch your feet sink as the water laps.
Yeah, and I don't think there's hardly any trees, or if there's any trees at all on the island. So then the next thing is how did they get these heads in place? You know?
Yes. Well, there was...
And how do you hunt and stuff, you know, because it's all basically grasslands, so...
I was actually watching video on it, and they were saying there were certain ways they moved them across the island in specific paths to make it work. I can't remember exactly what they were saying. It was a long time ago I watched it.
Yeah.
But the explanations they had made you think of it and go, possible.
Well, this is the interesting thing, right? Now, this has been done again in the last 30 years, but it's a very mysterious thing. Now, they found documented... I don't want to use the word proof, but they found documentation that when you talk about the pyramids, you know, how they move those big stones, they aren't even the biggest single stones in the world. There are some others somewhere else that are 3-4 times the size of the stones that are used in the pyramids. And these have been moved into positions, and when they are put together, like the pyramids, you can't even squeeze a piece of paper between them. And they said, how do you move these? Because there's just not, even if you said all the manpower, you can't literally get enough people around these objects to use the manpower to lift them. Now, what they've found is actual documentation to say that they use sonic levitation, using sound waves and things like that to actually create to get things to levitate. And apparently in the 50s or the 60s, some people were in Tibet and they helped the monks out with a lot of stuff. And as a gratitude thing, they actually showed them how they did this, and they set this whole thing up, and they actually showed them. And there's actually video proof somewhere that they used sonic frequencies to create a levitation effect. And they said, once it was hovering, this thing, which could weigh 2,000 tons, they could push with a finger. And
well, you look at that in the sense of putting a piece of paper flat on top of a speaker and playing.
Yes, it's the same sort of thing. It's the same sort of thing. Now, they've been able to actually make it happen with very tiny, like you said, with like paper and very small objects. They can do that now, as you said, using speakers and things. Now, there was a guy, I believe he lived in the south of England in the 70s, and he bought this big block of land, and what he did was he used these big cut, you know, probably the same sort of size as Stonehenge, not as grand as the pyramids and things like that, but he built this whole thing on his big block of land, but he would only do it when there was nobody around, and he'd actually been in contact with these people in Tibet, the monks in Tibet, and it's believed that he used these sonic resonance kind of levitation to move these things all by himself, because he built this whole thing by himself with his own hands, and there was never any other machinery there and stuff like that, and people don't know how he did it, and I think he died not telling a soul about it.
Yeah. When, and what you're saying, they can't even get that degree of accuracy today.
No, they can't.
They still say they can't recreate the moon landing because of technology they lost in the time.
Yeah.
You know, when you're talking about moon landings and whatever else not with the technology and the size of people with the pyramids, who's to say that they were our size? It's been known to say there was a race of humans that were bigger than us.
I'm just flicking back up through the chat a little bit, and Fernando's put a thing up about Hart Island in the US, 85,000 bodies discovered in a mass grave. What are they doing? What are they doing? And who are these people?
When you look at it, the anomalies of people that are like 7 foot.
Yeah.
Who's to say that a lot more people weren't bigger than that back in the day?
Yeah. Which leads to the Anunnaki. The Anunnaki.
Yep.
The Anunnaki were the giants. And
if you want to go off of scripture and the Bible, well, the Bible states there were giants anyway. Look at David and Goliath.
Yeah.
Obviously, David wasn't a giant, but
no. No.
And it's in the Bible. It must be true.
Yeah. There you go. Carl's just brought up the Anunnaki there.
Yeah.
So, and if you believe what they're saying, they're talking about. Now, this goes back to it goes back to the show that will be coming out next week. Some of the stuff that we were talking about, and I know Jeremy's brought some of this stuff up in the past. Where we're talking about the Kuiper Belt and the Draconian Empire, which are a race of reptilians, which apparently control everything the other side of the Kuiper Belt, and any kind of human that would go through would have been wiped out. But they've let like Voyager and Viking spacecraft, wherever they are, just do their thing, and they could be wrong. I know Voyager, yes, but I'm not sure about the second one. But there's another one that goes out there now. They reckon that they're to do with the Planet X, which is what that science has actually proven based on the movement of the different I'm having a brain fart with it. The different orbits,
belts.
The different orbit patterns and stuff of the planets had like an oval sort of shape thing, and based on the movement of the planets, there's definitely another planet hidden from our view. They reckon it could possibly be on the other side of the sun, but it's believed
on the dark side of the moon.
No, not the dark side of the moon. On the other side of the sun, in a very similar orbit. But they reckon every 3,600 years it comes around. So in our lifetime, it's probably still all going to be around the other side. So we're not seeing it at the moment, but in a few thousand years, it'll be coming close, and that's when they reckon the Anunnaki come through. But they reckon the Anunnaki and the Draconians, are the same thing, and when they come back, they reckon there's going to be some serious shit going on.
That's Fernando. That's the island where people don't have intercourse. It's called No Fuck Island.
Where's that? Stay away from that one.
Norfolk Island, yes, I've heard of it.
Oh, that's like the other side.
Yeah. So what they're saying, in 2015, they supposedly the hypothetical Planet X could have the mass about 10 times of Earth and orbit 20 times farther from the Sun on average of Neptune. It may take between 10,000 and 20,000 Earth years to make one full orbit around the Sun.
I've heard like 3,600 years is the magic one that I've heard.
This is from NASA.
Interesting.
So I don't believe it at all.
Yeah. I mean, and this is the other thing, right? So you look at the natural orbit of planets as they're doing their thing, like it's an elliptical pattern kind of thing. So you would think that's a standard for all planetary objects. Yet the moon, it does a absolutely perfect circle. It's always the same. I mean, I know it's drifting a little bit each year, but it's a perfect circle around. And what they said is the circumference of the moon is, I don't know, whatever the ratio is of the size of the Earth, and then you times that out by the distance to the sun, and it's almost perfect. The sun's this big, the moon's that big. I mean, that's why we get our eclipses, because it's not quite the same, but eventually, with it drifting away, eventually it's going to be the exact same as the sun. So an actual eclipse, a full eclipse, then there won't be that ring around and stuff like that. And they're saying that's not natural. And they were talking about if you go through early scriptures of old, like old civilizations and things like that, they talk about the times before the moon came.
See, Carl, it's not need another space association. It's need another 7 astronauts. But people have been asking the question: if the sun's 147.29 million kilometers away from Earth, and we can see the sun from here, why can't you see the sun in space? People have been like lately. I've seen it up on a lot of places where people have asked, because the sun is 147.29 million kilometers away from Earth.
Yeah.
Why is space dark?
But it's not. It's just a vacuum, so the light molecules.
No, I'm not. I know the answer to the question, but it's just weird how people are asking that question now.
Yeah.
And that just goes to the whole point of showing that people are really that silly these days. You can understand why they've been dumbed down and they've forgotten about these ancient techniques to move big things simply.
And this is one of the things that they're saying is, you got to remember back when, well, even now, if you use a technology, say we went back to 1500s and we use some of our technology, because we are so highly advanced that they can't even conceive what we're trying to do, they couldn't differentiate between technology and us being gods. And that's why a lot of this chariots of the gods, which is, alien tech and stuff like that, comes into play. And it's interesting, like you're saying, is how much have we forgotten the forbidden magic or the old magics that we just don't do anymore? I've forgotten skills. I've forgotten skills that I learnt while I was at school all those many years ago. You know what I mean? You times that by a couple of thousand years, 10,000 years. What was common practice then that we just don't know? I mean, we're only using 10% of our brains, if that.
So about to say, imagine if we unlocked 20%.
Imagine if we unlocked more than that. Maybe that was the case. We used to use it, but what happens is when you're not using it, like with all exercise, the brain's a muscle. If you exercise those different abilities, it stays strong. But when you don't exercise, those bits die off because they don't get used.
Well, talking about the brain, that's the only organ to name itself.
Yeah.
Selfish. But it's like I was speaking to one of the guys at work, and they're like, oh, well, imagine doing work like this back in the day. It's hard enough it is now. I was like, well, cars were simpler then. There was no electric tools. It was all pneumatic or hand tools.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, that would have been good to learn how to do it that way. I'm like, well, you don't anymore, because you skip all that because there's power tools and batteries and manuals to show you how to do everything from manufacturers, which they just dumb it down so much for you. You're not using your brain, you're just reading and going, yep, done.
Well, to give you an example, right? Everybody knows
is good.
Yes, I'm a drafty, and I started out on a drawing board where you had the old set square, and you had all the whole. Well, yeah, we had all of them, and
compasses.
Compasses and the whole shebang. Now, back then, you didn't have an eraser. If something went wrong, we had to use a scalpel blade and talcum powder and scrape it out and then redo it. The old rotoring pens and stuff like that. So you had to know what you were doing. If you were going to do a split roof that's over a couple of different heights and things, you had to calculate the height difference opposed to the width distance. Then you had to take into account the angle of the roof, times this by that to give you how far to draw it in 2D, how far you had to draw the offset for your roof lines to work. You had to do all that by brain power, and we had a calculator. We weren't doing it on pen and paper. We had a calculator, but we started out doing that. Then we had 2D drafting, and they came out with a few little power tools and things like that where you're drawing everything. So if you delete something, you could do that. You could offset things nice and easy. It was sweet. It was clean. It did the job. Now, the next step is they came out with ArchiCAD, which is a 3D based program where you're actually building you're not drawing a house, you're building a three-dimensional model. And because you're building a three-dimensional model, you're just adding in the parameters, or the roof pitch is this degrees, and your offset for your eaves overhang is this. You draw that in, and then where the two bits meet, it takes the brain power out of doing these things. And what we were finding is then we started bringing in, and this is going to sound very racist, but we started bringing in Asian people who was perceived to be very tech friendly at the time. This was in the early days of ArchiCAD and stuff like that. And the problem we had was they didn't know what they were drawing. They were just putting something together. If there was a system error and they had to do something manually, they didn't know how to do it. And now with drafting these days, it's all, a lot of it's offshore, and they're good at reproducing something, but they don't understand what they're drawing. They're not seeing it on site and know. I like to know what I'm drawing before I draw it, so I fully understand what's going on. And this is just over 20 years, you know.
Let's be honest, half the architects don't know what the hell they're drawing anymore.
I'm not even talking about architects. Architects don't know shit. But, you know, it's like you ask a drafty to draw a treehouse, and they'll draw you a treehouse. You ask an architect to draw you a treehouse, and they'll go into the psychology of the tree and the feel of the bark and the color of the leaves, and
I drew it. You can do it.
Oh, they do that. They do that.
I know. But we can bend the glass this way. No, you can't bend the glass.
No, you can't. No. I remember this one job that my brother had years and years and years ago, where this architect, now you get a drafty to draw your plans up. This was way back then. You might pay $1,500, $2,000 to get your house plans drawn out. An architect, you're talking $7,000 to $10,000 for these plans, because they colour them in with, watercolours and shit, and they tell you it's all cool. But then they throw it to a drafty to actually make it work. Now he drew this thing with, it's going to be hard to describe on camera, but the two side roofs, it was like an M-shaped roof, right? So there was a valley gutter in the middle. Now, the two sides were shorter than the two inside ones. So you know what that means, don't you? You've got roof, gutter. It actually worked out that the actual gutter sat at about waist height inside the room on the top floor. They just looked at it on plan and go, yeah, that looks good, but they didn't think about the reality of the whole thing. Now, it just makes you wonder. I mean, if they'd have drawn that in a 3D program, because this was a while ago when this happened, they would have known that there was going to be an issue. They might not have known how to fix it, but they would have known that there's an issue. So technology makes everything easier for everybody, but the problem is you don't think as hard about doing these things, which means you're not exercising your brain as much, which means we're actually actively dumbing ourselves down.
Mm-hmm.
And where's that going to end?
Conspiracies.
Yeah, it's because I'm not going to say we're so dumb, because we actually think about things, but some people are so dumb that they just can't, and that's not being personal about stuff, it's just some people are literally that dumb that they don't think about the big picture, and there are still some very smart people out there who are playing the game, and you already mentioned their sort of name, one of the families in that back then. They've
been doing it for decades.
That's what I mean. They know how to play the game, so they're well ahead of the curve with all of that sort of stuff.
But not just that. You're talking about the same families that were in connections with the diamond restriction and making it that diamonds are rare. Every lady needs a diamond. Smart advertising campaigns make money. Let's do it, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Carl's firing away now. He's doing well.
Yep. I actually told one architect that his drawings had about as much relevance as a cartoon in the Sunday Times.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much.
But what else? So, does anyone have any other topics they want us to speak about?
Or any other weird islands? Any other weird islands?
There is a weird island just off the coast of Australia.
Tasmania.
No, New Zealand.
Close. We're going to get shot for that one, especially with it being Australia Day. But
Well, no, it's not New Zealand Day.
no,
It's not
I'm talking
Waitangi.
about
Sorry, it's not Waitangi Day.
Tasmania. I'm talking about Waitangi Day is
Tasmania.
coming up, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So that'll be a good one.
Look, let's be honest. Tasmania is like, you know, when you get a skin tag. That's like Australia's skin tag.
Oh crap! Hang on, I'm just reading what Carl's right.
I built an office for an architect one, 60 mil radius walls.
Yeah.
Oh, stuff like that.
Yes, Christy brought up a good one.
Which one though?
The real one or the second one, which is the one that they use for tourism?
I'm pretty sure it's the third as well.
Is there?
I think there was the last time we spoke about this. I was having a look at it.
What's his name? Don Julio, the caretaker, died there after the girl died. Oh yeah, yes, that's. But the problem is, you've got to. I think the real island now is all boarded up. They've actually put a fence around the whole bloody island.
Yeah, the Isla de las Monicas.
Yeah.
I probably butchered that completely, but
Yeah, probably. The real one, yeah. We don't want to go to the fake one, do we? Yeah, that's on. And if you ever watched the episode of Destination Truth where they went there and Josh Gates turns around and he goes, if this thing opens its eye, he goes, I'm going to... And then as he said that, it freaking opened its eye and it really messed with him, that one.
yeah, because that was that island wasn't an island to start with. It was formed from agricultural waste.
Mm.
So like all the hay and straw and everything else.
Which, again, goes back to Pavalia. Part of that island was, like I said, with the bodies and everything, and then trying to bury them and stuff. It's just...
What with the Doll Island?
No, that was Pavalia. That.
Oh, no. Well, yeah, the Don Julian Santana.
Yeah. The problem with that, though, if Christy went to that she'd come back with her. She'd take half the bloody dolls home with her.
So he wasn't just the caretaker. He was the guy that jumped in to try and save the child from drowning, but she drowned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It messed with him, and he ended up. Well, some say he died in mysterious circumstances. Some say he committed suicide the same way the girl did. Well, not committed suicide, but he met a very similar end, should we say? So yeah, that's another good island one. The entire UK, I guess, has got some weird stuff going on. I mean, I came from there, so I can speak.
Hey, look, they're saying that conscription might be back in soon as well.
What, the UK?
Yep. To do with everything with NATO and Russia.
This is why I'm glad I'm an old fart now.
Can you imagine that though? All the roadmen and the lads are like, all right, you're coming with us. They're going to go there with knives saying, give me all your shit. And they're just going to get blown up.
They'll be all going there with their bloody iPhones taking selfies of themselves.
No, not the Geordies.
Oh, no.
The roadmen.
And in all honesty, all you got to do is have a word with the soccer firms out there and you'll end up with another Green Street hooligan situation of an international level. So, yeah. But, yeah, come on, any more islands? I'm trying to think of a few more. We only had so many, we thought we'd keep going on them, but...
yeah, we've kind of gotten through a lot more than what we thought.
Well, we've already gone over our hour, but... so we did all right there, but... Building a citizens' army, yeah. It's interesting how they banned conscription after the Second World War and no, it was after Vietnam, I think, wasn't it? But it's sort of coming back now. I mean...
Well, America was talking about it months ago, and they were getting upset because the females were going to get drafted as well as the men.
Yeah.
And all these females were like, "No, we're not going to get drafted." It's like, well, hang on, you want equality?
Yes, I'm not going to say any more than that.
And then there's the fathers going, "No, you're not going to be conscripting my daughter and making her go to war." It's like, well, sorry, but they voted on what they wanted. They got what they wanted. Toughen up, bite your lip, off you go.
Yeah. See, I don't know if I'd want my daughter going off to war. Or my granddaughter. So,
what's the difference between your daughter or your son going to war?
Oh, it's exactly the same. I wouldn't want them going to war either. So
I wouldn't want to go fight for a corrupt government.
I've always said 100% conscript me to protect my country.
Nope, I wouldn't even do that.
I would to protect my country, but
I
not
would
to go
protect
overseas.
my family and friends.
Yeah.
I'd do it to protect my family and friends.
Yes.
That's it.
Well, yeah.
This government can go screw themselves, and so can the rest of the country.
And sadly, there's a lot of people that think that same way as well. I mean, I think there's a bunch of crooks that are in government. To tell you the truth, I'm pretty sure this entire financial situation going on at the moment is it's totally engineered. Totally engineered.
Oh, they're not countries; they're corporations. They're businesses. They're money makers.
Yeah. I'm just surprised Carl hasn't jumped in again.
I'm waiting for it. John Howard.
Just wait for that. It's going to go mental in the chat.
He gave us the GST when he said he wasn't going to do it.
Is that John Houston?
John Howard.
Is it John Howard?
John Houston. Yeah, had a problem.
Yeah.
No, he said it wasn't a core promise when he said there was going to be no GST.
I remember when they first started talking about the GST. Well, this is going off topic again. We're doing it. When they brought out the GST, they turned around and they said that there'll be 10% thrown on everything, but payroll tax will be dropped to 10% as well. Payroll tax did not get dropped, but they threw the tax on everything. But then you got the tax on the goods and the services, which means you end up getting double taxed on double taxed on double tax. So that 10% is more like probably 30%. Yeah.
Yeah, your wages get taxed, and you pay tax on every piece of goods that you buy. Then you do it. Yeah, just no.
I like the way they turn around and they say that the statistics or the numbers that they do show that real wage growth is happening in the country again, and people are better off than they've ever been. I've actually gone back 10 years ago when I was working. I'm not going to name where, but I was on more money than I'm on now. 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on more money. I was on more money than I'm on now a year ago. But it's been dropping. And I'm not talking about that. Yeah, I'm not talking about that difference between inflation and your wages are staying here, but inflation is doing this. No, I'm talking about my pay has actually dropped. Life is bloody hard, you know what I mean? And I don't know where they're getting their figures from.
What they were saying in the 70s and 80s, to live comfortably, you only need about $30,000 a year. Which would now, I think it's got the same monetary value of what $120,000 a year would be now.
Yeah. Way more than what I'm on, I can tell you that. Now...
Oh, 100%. And then they wonder why all these young people can't buy houses, they can't afford it. Well, no shit.
Well, we bought this place,
in
3 years ago, and... I'm not going to tell you what we paid for it, but
it's growing.
The valuation on it as of, I think Lynn checked it out a few weeks ago, it is over doubled.
Yeah, is that someone coming out and having a look, or just a quick estimate on the internet?
That's just the internet estimate. If somebody comes out and looks at all the things we put into it, you can probably add more onto it.
My parents built their house not long before you got yours that was finished. They have gained another $270,000 in equity.
Yeah. Yeah,
if not more. It's
ridiculous. I don't know how people can afford it. And then you look at the prices of cars, and I mean, when I was a young tyke, and my first car,
$8,000 was a lot of money.
All right, I will. My first pay, right? My first job, I grossed $104 a week for a 40-hour week. I paid $2 a week tax. Right, so I took home $102. I paid board, I put petrol in my car, and I lived a good life on $100.
Yes, but fuel was probably like 6 cents a litre. Bread was maybe 2 cents a loaf.
Well, I never used to do that. I used to pay my board, and all of that stuff was covered. But what I'm saying is now you can't even fill your car up for $100, and I'm only driving a 4-cylinder. You know what I mean? It's just life's changed. I mean, yeah, like you're saying, I think it's like 30 or 40 cents a litre back then, not even.
But systemically, if you make people poorer, they rely on the government for more things, and the government can shut it off whenever they feel like it.
And that's what they're doing.
And people were telling me I was crazy for saying that 5 to 6 years ago.
I remember when we were freaking out when petrol was going to hit $1 a litre. and it hit $1 a litre, and we were, oh shit! And then they started saying it'll never reach $2 a litre. It did. I think $2.30 or something like $2.40 a litre. I think it got to at one point. I mean, it's coming back down. It's up and doing its up and down thing at the moment. But at one point there, they were talking $3 a litre. You times that by 4, and that gives you an idea how much it is for you American people per gallon. So what's that? That's like over $12 a gallon. He's gone quiet. We'll probably have to get going soon because he's thinking too much about what he needs to say.
No. I'm just having a look. You look at the prices of the barrels of oil. They haven't changed much in the last 10 years.
No. Carl so miffed at the whole thing, he's actually retracted his own message.
What do you mean?
Well, he's obviously censored himself. No, I'm not going to say that.
No. Sometimes they get censored.
Oh, do they?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, there you go. If not self-censored, it was censored anyway. But yeah, I think we're going to have to get going.
So how's this? So in 2023, crude oil prices of the per barrel were averaged $19 less per barrel in 23 than what it was in 2022.
Petrol
So
prices
the prices dropped when petrol prices were rising.
Yeah. And you tell me that, and they say they're going to have a go at like the big shopping centres like Coles and Woolies groups for price gouging and stuff like that. Look at the bloody petrol stations and the oil companies. You know, they're the ones.
And that's with having Fuel Watch in place here.
Yep. Anyway, do you want to sort of round out what you want to have to say? Because I think it's time for us to do a bit of a runner.
See you later.
Oh, that was quick. All right. Well, take it easy, guys. And like I said before, definitely watch out for Tuesday's episode because you're going to love that one. It's the abductee and the agent. So we're talking alien abduction, and we will be talking to a ex-intelligence operative. And let me just say, he only could say some of the things that he had to say because his security clearance expired not long ago. So he still couldn't talk about he couldn't talk about anything that he's actually actively engaged in. But he did mention a few things about indirect, that he wasn't directly, and he had no duty of care or whatever that term is, NDAs or disclosure agreements over certain other aspects. And what the hell happened there? I'm getting a right cold breeze coming up, man. I don't know where it's coming from.
Yes, it's the Scientologists.
Right on this side, eh? As if there's a me goose. Look at me. I don't know if you can see it, but
that's a microphone. It's the Scientologists are here for you.
Damn. Time to go, people. Time to go. He's mentioned the S word. Let's go before we get frozen out again. All right, take it easy, peeps.